Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Lazat. I do video production. I'm a resident here in Franklin, and I've been hosting these village talks. And today, we're all rushing to get back and talk to you a little bit about what's been going on. I do want to tell everybody that I went to a Franklin Community Association event on last Saturday morning. I think it was 9, and they do 9 and 11. It was it wasn't Zoom, but it was a bar class, and it was really not just the bar class itself. I was there actually with Mark's wife, Angie, and she invited me. And there must have been 20, 40 people coming through, having coffee that was provided. It was so awesome. So I just wanted to say to whoever put that together, really appreciate it. It was probably one of the most fun things I've done in quite a while. And I think that's going on the next 2 weekends in October. So I invite everybody to do that. And if anyone has any further details, let us know. So I'm going to kick it off over to Mark. I'm going to go behind the scenes now. And so if you have any questions for our candidates, please type them into the comments and we'll put them up and let's get started.
Okay.
Have fun.
Okay.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. So I've been riding around the village a lot lately talking to voters. And one thing that comes up consistently is people understand there are really 2 slates of candidates out there, and they find it hard to tell the difference between what Pam, Mike, and myself are talking about and what our positions are from their positions. So they're really asking for some differentiation. Like, what is the difference between our positions, our thoughts, our plans, and the other group of candidates? So I thought that'd be a good subject to talk about today. And maybe Pam, if you want to lead off.
Okay, I can do that. I think my comments are going to be fairly consistent with others I've made in writing and in some of my campaign literature, but I think there's a couple that I'd like to bring up. One of them is that I think I would draw a contrast between Bill Lamott, who's opposing me, and myself, is our views about balancing historic preservation and historic character, maintaining historic character with the need to for the village to adapt as times, population, demographics, and needs change. If I were to boil down a number of things, I think it falls into that category. For example, I've said in the village very openly, we don't live in a museum. I do not think that there isn't a building in this village that is fulfilling the purpose that it was originally constructed for. Not one, except perhaps the police station that was built in the 80s or early 90s. But when we're talking about historic preservation, things that come to my mind are enabling the village to have the tools it needs to pressure landlords, and in some cases, to maintain their properties and supporting that historic character by maintaining a beautiful old building. Another example of balancing historic preservation in the village with the needs of a current population is a number I've said before. Our village, when it was incorporated, had 1,000 people in it. It has 3,300+ people in it right now. That puts additional pressure on the infrastructure, the roads, the open spaces. So we are doing things like putting drains in. No one's going to see those and think about them in about a year, but they are the biggest cost driver of the streetscape. And they're important for us to do because we no longer live in a place where we can just pop a house or a building on top of the ground and then run cars down the road and everything's going to be fine. We have ditches, we have mud pits, we make it hard for people to get around. So those are the kinds of things that as your village president, I've been doing and will continue to do, that I think if you take the long view of that, actually contributes to the ability of our village to preserve its character. It doesn't take it away. So I'll pass it over to Mike or Mark at this point, but there's some other examples that I'm fully prepared to answer questions about from the audience.
Okay, well, I guess I'll take it at this point. And to reiterate, what President Hansen has said. You know, we live in a beautiful, historic, rural community that has changed significantly over the decades. And our sole purpose is to obviously maintain that. I live, as I've described before, in what I proudly call Franklin House. It's a historic home that was built in 1840 and was at one time a restaurant. And I'm very proud of that house. My wife and I have been living in the house since 1995. So we are definitely historic preservationists. We definitely respect the historic district and all of the things that that means in the village. But we have to march forward. And the streetscape plan that we put in place wasn't in any way a detriment to the historic district. In fact, it was enhancing and allowing connectivity for villagers throughout the community to visit the historic district and all of the retail businesses surrounding it. So I take Pam's point that we have listened intently to numbers of villagers, and we've taken all of their considerations into play. And so let's make sure that everybody understands we are not anti-historic in any way. We're very much pro our historic district, but we're also pro-business. And Mark can speak to this as a former business owner in the village, how important it is to have the support and the wealth of Franklin villagers to join with us, visit our retail shops, and enjoy Franklin and that downtown business district. We have got to attract new businesses now more than ever. And this beautification plan is dovetailing, unfortunately, with the worst economic crisis we've seen in decades. And so now more than ever, it's so important and so timely. And we are getting the project done. And by November, you're not going to recognize beautiful downtown Franklin.
So, Mike, so let's talk about business and business growth. I certainly have heard from some villagers that, oh, we don't want to overrun it with businesses, but more, almost to a person, they look back and said, man, we had a great thing with the market, we had a great thing with the coffee shop, it's gone now. If you look at the differences, like talk about the difference between our slate, our campaign, what our thoughts are, and other thoughts. I want to be really clear. It's easy to talk in like big, sugary, smiling vagueness about, hey, we should do this, right? There's a lot of people who say we should do things. So I want to make it clear that I am, there are talkers and there are doers, right? So I've got a track record of getting things done and doing things, right? It is easy to make a website, easy to make a flyer saying all these great things we should do without actually committing to actually getting something done. So here's some things that regarding the business district that we could do as council, and ideas that I would bring forward. I'd be advocate, for this in the council. So let's talk about how Market Basket and the Farmhouse Coffee left the village. I happen to know real details about this. And the thing we could have done as village council, which we don't do now, you should understand every landlord-tenant relationship that exists in the village. We only have 33 businesses. Some own their own buildings, but what could have happened now in retrospect is that had we had some sort of activity from Franklin Village Council to act as a mediator between the landlord and the tenant, both those leases could have been saved. I know beyond a shadow of doubt, I know every party involved. I know the conversations that happened. And because it was just a conversation between the landlord and the tenant, it got to the point where it's unsalvageable. That's why the market left. That's why Farmhouse left. And now we're left struggling. It's hard to build a business and bring something back into that relationship. So one thing I would advocate for, and I'm going to say that we have specific plans on these things, is that we would develop some sort of advocacy for that relationship. Act as a mediator. Talk through the problems. Make sure that the rents being asked are reasonable, and the landlord can see that, and that make sure that the tenant has enough capacity to draw in those customers and work through these lease problems. I mean, we should have done more to have saved those two. So that's something I'm going to show as a difference between our campaign, our slate, and the other slate that's on the ticket. Thoughts about that, Dan? Or other subjects?
You know, it surprises me. Your statement surprises me that with some council intervention, that situation could have been saved. I was not president then, but I was on the village council. And, you know, historically, the government has taken a hands-off approach to tenant-landlord issues. There's a lot of legal reasons that we can't intervene. We've forged business-government partnerships through the Main Street program that I think have worked really well. But historically, I've focused on trying to maintain good relationships between building owners and building operator or business operators. I wasn't aware of the possibility, and I wasn't approached by Steve, and I didn't attempt to intervene in that at all. In fact, I think the whole deal was just about dead by the time I even learned about it.
So
I would echo what President Hansen is saying here. Government really isn't able to get involved in landlord-tenant issues. We can certainly promote, and we do. We are big supporters of Main Street. Main Street is the driver for the downtown community. Main Street is the conduit. They have helped get grants for facade improvements, and they have helped all of the retailers who have asked for help to enhance their properties and to work together to promote our downtown environment. And the FCA does a lot of events as well in downtown Franklin. But we on government don't have that ability to intervene. We can simply suggest, we can modify and manage and help the landlords try to keep up their properties. We can insist that they do, but beyond that, our hands are somewhat tied.
We have the legs now with our ordinance, our business licensing ordinance revision, and our inspection ordinance. We do have the ability now to force building owners to take care of their property, and we never had that before last year.
So that's good, but you know, there's a lot of conversation about how do we bring businesses back, and business loss. We can take a more active role in helping solve that. So that's one thing I want to talk about. Another thing I want to talk about, certainly from hearing all voices of the village. Now, there's 4 ways that a resident can get their voice heard, and a lot of these voices are just not being heard. You know, when you think about, they can call or email the village office. You know, that's one voice, projecting one problem. They can have their 2 minutes on the village council meeting, right? And that's limited. Sometimes
3
we'll
minutes.
At the church. 3 minutes. All right, 3 minutes. 3 minutes to
3 minutes.
they could have a forum. Sometimes there'll be a forum. I know Streetscape had a forum at the church where they brought people in to talk about the plans. Or you do a ballot proposal, which is a really expensive and difficult way to get village sentiment. So it's important, and I feel this really strongly. When I think about all the villagers we have, all the residents, we can't just drive village council policy and strategy and efforts on the people who talk the most or yell the most or most active on social media.
Yeah.
That's not effective, in terms of an overall village. We have 3,300 people here, right? 3,300 people. So we need a better way to understand what matters to villagers in terms of like quality of life issues. Could be water drainage. It could be cell phone coverage. It could be all sorts of things that affect every villager. And so what I'm proposing, and actually, I'm starting to build a website that allows every villager, every household. We have about 1,100 households. So the ability for every household to log in and register their viewpoint about certain quality of life issues. So doing that, we can see the whole village map, all 1,100 households, and understand, let's talk about water drainage. Like if you had a heat map, this essentially builds a heat map of all these issues you could ask for input on. And anybody who logs in could, hey, Water drainage, I'm going to rate myself a 1 because we have problems. Council with the village offices could say, hey, we have a whole group of houses here with a real problem. Or when we talk about well quality, like, it's an easier way to get feedback from all voices of the village and not just voices that are most vocal or happen to attend a meeting or happen to get an email. So that's one thing I'm proposing, is that we represent all 3,300 residents, right? Voters, the non-voters, all residents of Franklin. And the ones south of 13 Mile have just as fair a voice to be heard as the ones north, the ones east of Franklin Road to the ones west of Franklin Road. So, I'm proposing some sort of website like that to enable a much more active, real-time understanding of these things that the villagers need. So that's one thing I want to highlight, is the difference between ourselves with ideas and actions versus other people who have a lot of talk, but not a lot of concrete ideas.
I think that's a really interesting idea. I think that I know that some of the candidates running for trustee have talked about, and including my opponent, have talked about sending big decisions out to the community for a vote, and that we should weaken the council versus because council is taking over and making decisions. We do have a representative form of government, and I personally think our council is doing a darn good job of that. But you were raising a point, Mark, that I think of as polling. And what if we were methodical about seeking resident input on an equal basis to ask for opinions about current issues, and then use it as a way to hear about problems or concerns and enable us to answer them. That makes a lot of sense to me. I don't think we're going to throw away the charter to have a simple democracy, but I do think we can do a better job of understanding the views and the concerns of people that choose not to come to council meetings or choose to just live here in peace.
Look, I want to say, I think that Mark raises an interesting idea. I think that we are very approachable. I personally believe that Pam and I are among the most approachable members of council. You can reach us anytime. I have given out my cell phone number in public, in broadcasts. I give out my email address. All of us have village email addresses. You can go to the village website and go to the village council and click on each of us to send us individual emails. We get very few. We meet every month in the village hall. Apparently, we're going to begin resuming that in person.
Yeah, next week.
Next week. And
oh, really?
The fact is, in my over decade of service, we have our monthly meetings that last about 2 hours. And I can count on the fingers of 2 hands, maybe, the number of people that are in the audience for those meetings. And then those meetings are broadcast on cable television and available for all to watch. And they're available on the village website for all to watch and read the minutes. So we are very approachable. We are absolutely working in the daylight to benefit our community. And we are asking for people to vote for us because we represent them. They don't want to come and chime in on every single issue before us, which are usually pretty mundane issues. This streetscape and a few other controversial issues are rare. And this is campaign season. So it's silly season here in Franklin. And the outpouring of negativity and support on social media is way over the top. And this will abate after November 3rd. Most of the villagers recognize that the village council does a pretty fair job of managing our budget, managing the affairs of our community, dealing with our police, our fire, our administrator, our building official, our treasurer, and they don't have to concern themselves with all of those mundane details. We do that for the glory that we get and $25 a year. So I think we're all in favor of ongoing communication and transparency. It's all there for anyone to see. And those that are poking at us right now are simply doing so because it's a campaign method. And they're all over the board with their ideas, and they're waffling. And if you look at the record, you will see the people that are running for office, where their positions were a couple of months ago in village council meetings and minutes on sidewalks, and where they are now as they evolve and say, well, I think maybe we could have some connectivity between this street and that street and around the corner and around the block, but it's not consistent. And that is not what we had in mind with our streetscape plan. We are taking that to the voters, and the voters will decide in a special election in May. And I believe the voters are going to chime in effectively and positively so that we can continue the program.
So one of the things we planned for this particular broadcast was contrasting Mark's views, Mike's views, and my views with the people who are opposing us. I'm wondering, Mark, what else would you want to talk to you that is different about you or unique about you in contrast to the other candidates?
That's your dog there, Mike.
My campaign advisor was chiming in the background.
Excellent. That's all right. We all have dogs. And
this is Frank.
So, Pam, there are differences, and this is what people are asking us. What is the difference between, they can't tell the difference. They're not that into local politics.
Yeah.
So, clearly. One thing I'm going to highlight and make clear is that when we talk about volunteerism and service, right? So we are servant leaders. We serve the public, right? It's not about my agenda or what's important, right? That's not the point. And one way to represent that or understand that is how you have volunteered in the community outside of any kind of candidacy, right? So I'll talk about myself first, and I'm I'm easy to talk about myself, but 10 years ago, let's talk about service community, what we have done, our own time, our own money, our own effort. So let's talk about the Franklin Park ice rink. So it was apparent when we built Farmhouse is that we need to do something in wintertime. So this is the village administrator. I asked the village administrator, said, why don't we have an ice rink? And he told me at the time, can't do it. Can't be done. There's, it's too hilly there. So I took that as an engineer, as a German engineer, I can be stubborn, and I do not back down from the challenge. So I said, I will do it. Give me permission. I went to the village council, got permission to put it there behind the library. And it was an engineering challenge. It was a physical challenge. But by myself, I bought the kit, built it by hand. I made probably 7-8 trips to Lowe's to buy lumber. And then the fire chief with his trucks, they filled it with 2,000 gallons of water. So that was out of my pocket. That was something I built. I wanted to do. I enjoyed doing it. It was really cool when it happened. Having an ice rink, a big ice rink. I think it was probably 60 feet by 40 feet. It was large.
Good. It was good. I remember.
For 2 winters. So that's one level of things that I've done for the community that I don't think our other candidates can be supposed to talk about. I have, my father was a lifelong scouter. He was my scoutmaster. I'm active in the Franklin Boy Scout troop. So when my father passed away, I donated the funds. The troop needs a new trailer. So I donated a new trailer to them. When we talk about Franklin Park, that gazebo, a year ago this week, I was out there with the troop, rebuilding the stairs, rebuilding the posts, painting it. So this is long before I ever became a candidate. I'm not looking, I didn't do those things to try and have, one notch on my resume for candidacy. Those are things I did on my own, for the village on my own time and money. And I know Mike has the same kind of stories about his service through the decades.
We, volunteerism is everything in this community, and people forget this. This is a volunteer organization. The council, we are volunteers. We aren't professional politicians. And so people need to remember that much as you can criticize the things that you disagree with us on, unless you've stepped up, shame on you. We are all volunteers, and I've been a volunteer in this community for the entirety of my time here, starting out with the FCA, which I often reference proudly because they are the fun organ of the community with our roundup and our movies and our music and our Frankenstein frenzy and all the fun things that we do. And I did that for 14 years between president and member of the FCA before I became on council. I'm active and supportive of Next, which is our seniors facility. In case people in Franklin don't know, we have a seniors facility that is available to them for all kinds of senior classes, activities, art classes, fitness classes, and I serve Meals on Wheels out of the Next facility every week. And so I'm proud of the things that I've done. And I would ask those of you that are listening in to check out the other candidates that are looking to vie with us for these opportunities to serve you, and ask them what they've done in this community. How deep do their roots go serving the community as Pam and I have for decades?
I'm not going to go through my resume of community service, but I think what I'm going to do is just comment that that the years that I've spent since about 1996 volunteering in one way or the other here have enabled me to, I think, have a view of what a village president does. I've known several village presidents and learned from them all. But I do know it's a job that requires a broad reach and a broad view. It's not just you can't be a single issue president. It won't work. This is an alive community with issues, problems, strengths, challenges, just like any other city. We just do it on a little bit smaller scale. As a voter, I encourage you to look at the candidates and think first about what's important to you, and then check those resumes. I have a bias to take the time, contribute to the community, understand what makes it tick, and then jump into a leadership role. Have a point of view. Ask your candidates what they're selling you, and if it's something you want to buy. And then make your decisions. We are a nonpartisan village. This is not a village lined up on any political party sides. And we should, and it's in our charter, by the way, that is the case. That was designed in 1954. That won't change. So therefore, it's incumbent upon voters to learn and get to know the people that you want to choose to be your leaders, and make sure that they represent hope and possibility for your view of the future of this village. I mean that.
And also, I would also suggest that you do your own research because, as I say, there's an awful lot of social media misinformation. It's been very, very frustrating to all of us. And unfortunately, we don't know how many eyeballs are on that social media. But I urge you to look at the actual village website for the meetings that we have held and read the minutes for those meetings and listen to the comments made by those who are running for office and see if they square with what they're saying now. See who's consistent, who's evolving. We, Pam and I, have been completely consistent and transparent about our feelings about our streetscape, our sidewalk connectivity, allowing villagers throughout the community to enjoy our village amenities. And as far as the water issue that will be before voters in the future, it was simply a method of beginning the process of being proactive rather than reactive, because we know that there are changing styles and tastes within the community. And from a decade ago, when we last went to voters on water, things have changed dramatically. And we have to be prepared and be proactive for the future. The simple issue of laying a pipe in the ground while we were tearing up Franklin Road was the entirety of my idea last summer after there were some contamination issues reported. Lay a pipe in the ground before we tear up Franklin Road and be prepared for the future. We'll have plenty of time to research the connectivity and the costs, and then people can opt in or ignore depending upon their needs. That was it. Nothing more than that. And I'm on record, as are the people that voted against putting it on a ballot. Those people are running for re-election. They did not want voters to vote on water. I do.
And that would have been the lowest cost way to do that. That would have been the, when you think about the heart of Franklin Village, that's the hardest place to get water. And while the road is torn up, that was the lowest cost way to do that. So it's a shame that got voted down by some of the folks running for office right now. I think we're almost out of time, but Pam, when you're talking about learning more, and Mike talking about learning more about the candidates. So I encourage anybody listening, go to each of our websites. My website is markhanke.org, and you'll learn more about me, and you will also have my phone number. You feel free to call me and send me your thoughts. So that's one way to learn about Mark Hanke. If you don't see me riding around a bicycle, you can go to my website or give me a phone call.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, all right. I'm
Yeah.
going to tell people to go to Pam's website and write in Pam Hansen for president. And oh, by the way, sure, you can check me out to reelectmichaelseltzer.com, where you will find my phone number, my email address, and links to both Pam's website and Mark's website, because I support them both.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure being with you again today. And thanks, Mark and Mike. It was a good conversation.
Thank you.
Enjoy.